The Houston Red Rockets right now looking like the special needs child of the NBA right now, as for the past 2 seasons, they have been the laughingstock of the league. They have just been really bad. And if you ask someone like Eric Gordon, who is on their roster, there has been literally no improvement to this team. But in this video, I'm going to be getting to why I personally think the Houston Rockets have a much brighter future than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Because if you see a lot of these other young teams and all these teams, they get praised for how bright their future could be and what they're going to be moving forward, while the Houston Rockets, on the other hand, kind of get bashed for it. So I'm going to be getting into why I think the Rockets, as well as a lot of these other young teams, have very bright futures going ahead. And I'm not even a Rockets fan. This is pretty much me addressing a lot of the Rockets fans, at least I see on Twitter. They have one of the most impatient fan bases I have ever seen, and I want to give them a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel. So I'm beginning to a few reasons why I think this future is very bright for the Houston Rockets and how it could be a lot better and a lot sooner maybe than a lot of people think. So the first argument I want to address is the whole there is just absolutely no improvement from this roster from last year to this year. And once again, this is spearheaded by Eric Gordon, who has said in an interview that there has literally been no improvement from the beginning of this year to where they are right now. And he's also said of a lot of Twitter fans kind of set off as well, saying that they have basically an identical record as they did last year at the same time, which is true. The record this year compared to last year at the same time is very similar, but you have to take in a lot of more things in account, and you have to take things into context. As if you look at last year's offseason, they lost their best player in Christian Wood, who last year was by far their best player, hands down. They lost their starting power forward in Daniel Theis, who did play 26 games for them. Jae'Sean Tate just got healthy this year, and he was a starter for them literally the year before. DJ Augustine played 34 games for them, and he was their sixth man off their bench and was very solid. And they also lost Daniel House Jr. to the Philadelphia 76ers, who as well played 16 games for the Houston Rockets. So, I mean, they lost a ton of experienced veteran players that know how to win. And what did they replace them with? They replaced them with very young, high ceiling, but much rawer type players, and players like Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, Ty Washington, and even Bruno Caboclo, who's only 24 years old. Those are the players they use to replace all those veteran level players and hire just more knowledgeable players that know how to play to win more than what these young guys would. And that is shown as the average age of last year's team in 2021 through 2022, the Houston Rockets had an average age of 25 years old, while on this team, they have an average age of 23.9 years old, and that would be even lower once they trade Eric Gordon, and if Boban Bogdanovich's 34-year-old ass wasn't on the team as well. So I think for sure that this team is just much younger than even last year's Houston Rockets team, and that is why they are at the same win rate. And the fact that they are at the same win rate should be very promising for a lot of Houston Rockets fans, because if now you have a much younger team than you did the year before, much higher ceilings on pretty much every player that actually gets minutes for you on the roster, and the future looks much more bright than it did even just a year ago, because if you have the same amount of wins but with a much younger team, those young guys are going to develop, they're going to get better, you're going to be able to add veterans and bring them in through free agency, the draft, offseason, things like that, and your team is going to just keep getting better and better, and it's going to snowball on top of each other. So I think the argument that there's been no improvement is just completely false, because you got younger and you're at the exact same win rate as you were when you had veterans with much lower ceilings or players that had already peaked. So I think their future is much brighter than it was last year, and that in itself is improvement. And then even just looking at the individual improvement side of things, players like Jalen Green, who get tons of flack, Green, although not probably where Houston Rockets fans would want him to be, he still flashes that ginormous ceiling that he has every once in a while. He still shows he does have that star talent and maybe even superstar level talent if he can put it all together. And it's not like he hasn't improved at all this year, as he is still giving you more points per game, assists per game, and rebounds per game on basically the same efficiencies as he was last year, but he's giving you more points and all that as well on just the exact same efficiencies. So although the efficiency is not there, he is improving in very key areas for his position, and that is always the last step for young scoring level guards when it comes to scoring. It's their efficiency. Look at Zach LaVine. It took him 4 years until his efficiency efficiencies got to where they are right now and actually respectable level and become the scorer he is right now. So I think for sure it taking a few years for Jalen Green to get more efficient in what he does is just normal. That's just how it always is, and it's going to be even more personified for a guy like him because he is the number one option, and he's only, what, 20 years old, and he is your number one option on a very bad team, meaning teams are only game planning for you, and that is so hard to deal with when you have no veterans to help you out with it, nobody to really take the scoring load off of you, and it fully relies on you, and you're only 20 years old. That is very, very difficult to deal with. And the next young guy I want to get into is going to be Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith, although it's not looking like the all-star some people may have expected him to look like, but I don't think that was the case. I think for most people that followed the draft closely, knew Jabari Smith wasn't going to come into the NBA and average 20 points per game immediately, because that's just not what he is. Now, maybe one day he will give you 20 points per game, but he's going to have to get comfortable and get into that. What he is mainly picked for is that extremely high ceiling he has because of all the length. He can be a great two-way player. He can be a great passer, rebounder, and do so many things at a high level due to how he's built, and then he can also score. So scoring is not the only thing, and that's what a lot of people are looking at Jabari and like, why aren't you scoring more? But if you really followed the draft, you would know you didn't expect him to come out scoring at a high level. You expected him to come out and do everything else at a fairly good level and just keep building on that as time goes, and that's kind of exactly what Jabari's rookie year has been. He's been giving you about 12 points per game. He can score when he has to. He hasn't looked horrible on offense. His efficiencies could be better, but still, that's not terrible. He was a third overall pick. And then also, from a defensive standpoint, he's been fine. He can rebound, he can pass, and all these are just going to keep getting better and better as the team gets better and as they get more comfortable playing together. So I think Jabari Smith is having a fine rookie year, and I don't think many people should have expected him to come out and look like an all-star out of the gate or anything like that, but I do think with time, he's going to look very, very good going into the future. And now even another high ceiling guy is Alperen Sengun, who they drafted 2 years ago with Jalen Green, and Sengun has seen significant improvements in very big categories. He's giving you more points per game, rebounds per game, on better free throw percentage, and much better field goal percentage as well. So he's been more efficient and getting you more points, rebounds, and assists in everything what he needs to do. That's exactly what you want your starting level center to do. The only thing Sengun has to do is desperately, and I mean desperately, improve his defense, because right now he can't defend anything. But if he can ever just become a competent defender, there's legitimately going to be an argument for him to be a top 12, top 10 center one day if he can just get the defensive side of the ball down, and that is always the last thing to come for young guys, at least for the most part. So I think for sure Sengun's at least going to get better on defense. I don't know if he's ever going to be a good defender, but he should definitely get better as time goes on. His efficiencies are going to keep going up, his points should keep going up, his rebounds should keep going up, and this guy is going to look very, very good. So that's now 3 young guys I've gotten into, and they still have so much more. Kevin Porter Jr. is another one. He's only 22 years old, and he's giving you 20 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game as well. If he could just get his 3-point percentages up just a little bit, he is going to be very, very good for them for a very long time. He knows how to score the ball, he knows how to do so many things, and he has so much time to develop his efficiencies better, take better shots, and learn how to play winning basketball, that he's just almost guaranteed to at least get to a point to where he is a very, very solid bench guy at minimum on a winning team. And now, the next young guy, this team is just literally like overloaded with young talent, and that's why them having not a great record is very acceptable for how young they are. Another young guy who gets a lot of minutes for them, Kenyon Martin Jr. He has looked very, very solid for them. He comes off their bench and he gives you 10 points per game, 5 rebounds per game on 55% shooting from the field. He's a very high energy guy. He can play both ways, and he's just one of those very fun players to watch. And Kenyon Martin off your bench is very, very solid. You love to have high energy guys, very athletic guys that can give you 10 points per game on very efficient numbers and do the dirty work and rebounding as well. You can't ask much more for that. Tari Eason's very similar. He was their second pick in last year's draft. I think it was 17th overall, and he's looking like he has a very high two-way potential. He can score the ball at times. He's very athletic. He's a very solid defender. He has great size for what position he plays, and he is just a very, very solid player. And Tari Eason has a very high ceiling as well. And then the last guy that I want to get into is going to be Ty Washington. He was dominating the G League when he plays there, and now that he's back there, he's once again playing very well in the G League. Now, he didn't play great when he got called up, but he only played for a few games, and he didn't get a lot of minutes in those games, and I'm sure next year he'll probably be the backup, maybe even starting point guard when it comes to next year's lineup. So I think Ty Washington as well has a very, very high ceiling, and with that many players on your roster having that high of ceilings, and even some of them having star level talent like Jabari and Jalen Green, you cannot not say that their future is at least somewhat bright, and not a lot of people really give them credit for that, because yes, they suck right now, but what do you expect from a team that has that much young talent and just got rid of so many old guys and replaced them with nothing but young guys as well, and they lost their best player of the year before? You're going to struggle, and that's exactly what they're going through. They're going through growing pains, and as they get older, as they get more experience, and the chemistry builds, and they add more veterans, and they add players through like any different types of avenues, this team is going to get better, and the future is going to get brighter. And just for a little bit of a comparison for all the other youngest teams in the NBA, what they're currently going through, the third youngest team is the San Antonio Spurs, who is 13-27. Nobody bashes them. They're actually seen as like they have a bright future because of Sochan and players like that, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. They're looked at to have a bright future. No one really talks about them. The second youngest team, the Orlando Magic, they're 15-25, but they're looked at to have a ginormously high ceiling because they have players like Bol, Paolo, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, RJ Hampton, Markelle Fultz, and they talk about all these high upsides, but they never talk about how bad the teams actually are. And then even the youngest in the league is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are 18-22, which doesn't sound bad, but they're kind of coming back down to earth as they just had a 6-8 December where they did not play that good, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is basically carrying that team right now. The Detroit Pistons, another one of the youngest teams, they are 11-32, and then the Charlotte Hornets are 11-30, and those are all some of the youngest teams in the entire NBA. So, and none of them, besides the Hornets, probably really get talked about that much as being a awful team. Everybody else acknowledges that these teams are rebuilding. They're trying to get Wembanyama. They're trying to retool. They're just trying to play for the future. But when it comes to the Houston Rockets, I see a lot of disrespect. Like they have no direction. They're not going anywhere and things like that. And I really don't see that at all. The only major move I think the Houston Rockets really have to make is fire Salas. I don't think Salas is the right coach for the job. I don't think the players buy into him. I think they need a young guy who's going to come in with high energy like the Pelicans did with Willie Green. I think they need someone like that, and that's really the only major move I would say the Houston Rockets have to do right now. But overall, I would say the Houston Rockets do have a fairly bright future, and I can definitely see a direction where they're a playoff team in the next 2 to 3 years as well, barring any major trades or moves. So I think for sure that the Houston Rockets fans do have things to be happy about and do things have to have like light at the end of the tunnel for many different reasons. To have that many young guys with high ceilings on your team, I think for sure that they should be celebrated more, and I don't think the Houston Rockets are as far behind as a lot of people think when it comes to the youngest of the youngest teams in the entire NBA. But unfortunately, guys, that's my first video, so comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think the Houston Rockets have a brighter future than a lot of people think? I want your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you do like the video, point to the like button, and subscribe button, it would mean the absolute word to me. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye.